Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Grateful Not Greedy podcast. My name is Chris, and I am here with my very internally healthy and wealthy co-host, and her name is
Rachel. Hi, everybody.
Rach. Today, I am thinking about some pretty serious stuff, and I said healthy and wealthy because I think those two things can coexist, and it would be really helpful for me today if you would support me in the conversation that has been swirling in my head about money and how I think about money and how to plan for money. And just a little quick mini backstory. This week, I had an unexpected repair on my house, one of those emergencies where you're like, oh, this is why I have this emergency fund, but I don't even want to spend my emergency fund, even though that's why I set it up for emergencies. But it gets for emergency. I'm like, what do you mean you're going to take my whole fund? So just to get everyone on the same page, I had a plumbing emergency at my house that turned into the solution was, rather than taking the shortcut solution that's temporary, that I could end up having the long-term solution later. We were like, you know what? It's just time to bite the bullet. I have an older house. And so we just did the long-term solution, but that is very costly. And it's the correct thing to do. However, it doesn't change the fact that it's the holidays and I have kids in college and I have an erratic work schedule because, I still am driving my daughter all around. So it's a lot of money to do a repair like that. So it just kind of got me thinking about our money stories and the ability to plan or not plan. And even when you plan, in that case, I had planned and I'm still stressed about even spending the money. So like, where does that come from? And I thought, Rachel and I have talked about this in cursory ways, I feel like over the years, kind of a roundabout ways, but maybe it's fruitful today just to have a really open dialogue about money. What is it for? How do we use it? How do we get our head around it? How do we not wake up at 3 a.m. like having a panic attack about how are we going to pay for this or move that around or, make things work, and really letting our money work for us rather than being reactive so often. And to your point, what you say so much is, it's not in the long term, it's not a big deal. You can make, there's very few choices that you're going to make that are deadly, if you will, financially. So, So let's open the floor, Rachel. Let's open the floor to talk about some money things if you're up for it. Because I think you and I have kind of a similar, I don't want to say, well, how would I say that nicely? Almost like an anal retentive, like approach to money.
That's true. Yeah. Here's the disclaimer before we start talking about it.
I would qualify this very much as an area of growth for me, just in terms of the thinking about it. Yeah, just like being a little more free with it and being like, oh, this is fun. I get to play with money, Yeah.
Right.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think about why is this subject hard? Why does it trigger so much? And the house that I grew up in, there was no discussion of money. It was off, not okay. It's very private. Things that are private when you're growing up become very powerful. So the money has more power, which money in general has power. So now it has even more power. And it wasn't discussed, or I wasn't educated on it. And that created a not a great foundation.
I think we were the same, Rach. I think we didn't have as much conversation about the actual aspects of money. This is how to think about it. This is how to invest. This is, if you get the money, Dad said, yes, you need to do your IRA, but that was the end of it,
Well, but even the idea of how are they managing money, so you could learn what they're doing, right? Or not doing.
How are they making decisions? How are they?
Yeah. And I totally remember this. It's such a clear memory, so bizarre. The Brady Bunch, right? There was a Brady Bunch episode where they paid off their house and they had a party, and it was the mortgage statement burning party. And they had a party at the Brady Bunch house. Everybody was there. And then they took the last mortgage statement and burned it. And it was whoa. And I was wow, that's so cool. You're celebrating finishing a major milestone. So then I remember asking my dad about that and being like, hey, I was like, that's such a
our party.
yeah, like when are we having our party? Like when is it done? He's like, we don't talk about that stuff. And that would not be public information, like blah, 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 blah. Like no one should know where you're at on those things. And I was just like,
Oh,
that's what I'm telling you. That's where, and I was like, whoa. And didn't even give me the information of what he was doing and why, but saying, shut it down. This is like, and okay, this is going to tie into like another big piece is like, I had no idea at that age. I was young. I'm obviously watching the Brady Bunch after school.
Oh, I thought we were just going to do the only episode I remember, which is Marsha, Marsha, Marsha.
No, mine is like the football hitting a base. Like, yeah. So, anyways, but it what I know now is how he reacted to that was based on how he was raised and his money story and inherited from his parents and his parents' parents, right? And so I didn't know that. I was then immediately getting a quick download of my inheriting money story from him that I just understood.
Exactly. You're like, wait a minute, let me take the notes. This is going to be my story too. So
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
But you know what? Your brain just takes them in and implants them deeply.
Yes.
And I didn't realize how much that moment had impacted me. And because I've been thinking a lot more about like, what is your money story? And we can talk more about this, but, like where are your values from? Where do they come from? And they can come from, our parents or how we grew up and their parents, and it's multi-generational, could be around people you're surrounded, the environment you're in, what happens as you're growing up. All of these things impact how we view money. But then the question is, at some point, I am at a point in my life, I'm like, does that serve me? Is that true? Like, is that how I want to live? Or am I repeating the cycle? Right? That's what, the story does. So, I do remember that moment. And I love the fact that nowadays I feel like it's easier. It's not as negative to talk about money. Like, and I specifically, and I know you do this too with your kids, you talk about money, you talk about the decisions you're making, or like, here's the problem, and you like lay it out. And I like took Dax to my financial review every year. Like I take him, I sit him down with me. I'm like, here, you can hear what's going on. You can hear the decisions I'm making. You can hear all of these things. Like, let's do this together because I want him to be educated.
Yeah.
And I don't want
the considerations. Yeah. There's always there's no free lunch, right? So it's like,
there was no
ask the gives. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, people are like, well, the question is, it's never too early to start, having your kids somewhat exposed, right? They don't have to know all the details, but at different ages, it's appropriated different ways. And then all of a sudden they go to college and you expect them to manage their food money or like something, and they have no idea how to do it. And you're like, well, they should start to understand it. So I'm personally trying to break that cycle that I came from to be very different in that way with my son and how he understands money, manages money, sees it, and takes the power out of it. Like you said, like just to talk about it freely.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, we've talked about this rental property situation that I have recently become involved with, which was a no-brainer, but it's turned into my very much full-time job. So, yay me. Which I guess that's what it's designed to. Thank you, to the government. But yeah, it has definitely become my full-time job. Well, one of the things that I've grown from, that I can see that I've grown from, is I am very consciously bringing the kids in on that conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just as much to support me as it is to educate them. Right. So I think I'm listening to you, and I certainly agree that imparting that to your kids, but part of it also is like, there are no secrets here. It's like your secrets. It's kind of the same thing with money, right? So there's no secrets here. So when my son asked me, well, how much did that place cost? I was like, my initial reaction was like your dad, like, well, like, I don't really need to talk to you about money. I don't want you to go and tell your friends like, oh, my parents just bought this thing. And because they, exaggerate it and they make it like, so we just bought the Taj Mahal and, it is insane. We're renovating it. It's not good enough yet, like all that kind of stuff, which is not even close to the case. Unfortunately, because I do love the Taj Mahal, but being able, I think the real growth for me, which I'm noticing, like actively noticing, is bringing them in on the conversation so that I have to be responsible for talking about money. So I have to be responsible for saying it costs this much. My note is this much. So that makes the payment this much. The taxes are this much. And not not that I can't talk about that. I mean, obviously, we've talked about this many times. Like I understand finance, but it's really just like allowing that to be a living, breathing thing. So it's not just me like internalizing all those decisions and the way to think about it, and only I could figure this out or anything like that too. So I think part of my money story is being, I don't know if it's secretive, but maybe it's being embarrassed, about like not having, I didn't do this correctly. I mean, there's mistakes that I made for sure, right? For sure, I've made mistakes and
That's such a
give
good
myself
point.
up for that, because it's like, I've made these mistakes. I should know better. Or I should have been able to see that, like with the housing crisis or whatever. And no, a lot of people miss that, Chris. And you're not sitting there at the desk every day. You're dealing with, your lots of other things. And just letting myself off the hook of that a little bit has been so much powerful. But I still struggle with that. Like for sure, I still struggle with that, because I look at it and it's like, okay, all things being equal, if I had a crystal ball, I would be in a very different financial position right now, but I'm not. And so it's almost like compensatory then. Like, okay, so then I have every decision I'm making now, I have to be right on the money. I have to be like exactly correct. It has to be right. And you listen to people even talking about investing or when to invest, or, we to learn in school, like you don't time the market. You just get in, like suck it up. And then if you're not in on these 7 days over the last, 40 years, you've lost X amount of dollars. There's all these models that people put together. But I can definitively say that a lot of my money story is based on fear. And
Interesting. Yeah. And where's that come from?
probably DNA based, because, I have two parents who had different upbringings, but then their parents were, depression survivors and, just raised in a very different economic climate, and that flavors you. And then growing up, it flavors you. So my communication in growing up was, money's scarce.
Mm.
Money's definitely scarce, even though I had the sense of scarcity, but I didn't have the reality of scarcity. Right. So that's kind of an interesting interplay. Right. So I didn't have the reality of like, oh, I don't know, we can't do those swim lessons because they're too expensive. I didn't have that reality, but I have the reality of swim lessons are really expensive, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can kind of talk about that. Even like recently, I've been asking, my friends who are in different phases of their financial lives, like, well, how are you thinking about this? Who's helping you decide when to take withdrawals on this account or that account, or which account are you set up for? And I remember asking my girlfriend's dad when I was probably 25 years ago, 30 years ago, who had retired, his late 40s or maybe early 50s. And I remember asking him a million years ago, how did you do that? Like, how do you do that? Like, how does that even happen? And he gave me the answer. And, here I am without the answer.
Yeah.
And you realize like so much of it can become automatic in your decision making, that you just have to like jump into making conscious decisions. And to your point, writing your own story and then changing how it impacts you, because it definitely has been a source of stress in a very like, inconsistent way, like, oh,
Yeah.
take this great vacation. That's amazing. Okay. We don't even think about that. Like, okay, that's done. And then something else comes up, like my pipe bursting. And that to me is traumatic, right? Even though the money is exactly the same. And I have way more planned for, this emergency. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's loaded. I mean, it's super loaded.
It is. I mean, there's so many threads to pull on with what you just shared. But the piece that you shared about, when your son asked like, what did the plays cost? And like our initial reaction was like, what do you need to know? But then it's like I've now gotten in the habit of saying, I'm happy to discuss these things in detail with you, but this stays between us. Like this stays between us. This is not for discussion. And I lay that out because if he wants to know the details, I'm happy to share them. There's nothing there. Like there's nothing to hide there. But it also is not something, just like kids talk. Right. And so it's a good lesson for
without context. Let's just talk in sentences. Yeah. That would still.
And then, the other piece of that is like the idea of like what we learned growing up and how that impacts our decision making now. That's our stories, right? And you were sharing about, this idea of like scarcity, but not really having scarcity. And that was definitely inherited by your dad. I know a bit about, I know your story about that.
It becomes like a shame thing too. And then you're like shamed that you even can afford these swim lessons. And then I shouldn't be able to afford them, I guess, because they're expensive. But what? I'm going. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very confusing feeling as a kid, right? Like our nervous system, kids, they can sense so much, right? And, and they can sense basically the environment, on the tone, on the feeling, on how the parent is reacting, like all of that stuff. So whatever is going on there, this kid is like your kid or you were taking it on. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this then becomes a part of you of like, oh, well, and there's this like interesting line of like, I want my son to know things cost, right? If he's going to a wrestling tournament on Oahu, we're like, okay, well, absolutely this is important and it's part of your, your plan. And like, know that like all of these, like we have to be selected. Like there's not an endless pot here. Like there's like
One
decisions.
pot of gold. That's what I always say. There's one pot of gold. Yeah.
Exactly. There's no money tree in our yard. And but for him to understand that, but without feeling guilty about asking for it or guilty about your need. And that's the line. It's like, how do we toe that? Because I like, I just like you, like I'll go on a trip and I'm like, okay, I've set aside that money. I know what it's going to be used for. And I put it there. And then when I come back, I pay for it. And I'm like, oh, pain, like, do I really have to use that fund for it? But that's what it's there for. Right. And then there's like,
yes.
and, I'm better about letting that go faster. It used to be a harder process for me.
Right, too. Maybe that's growing up. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just growing up and understanding our values. Like I know we both value experiences.
Yeah.
And so the putting money towards those. Maybe we don't value plumbing every day, but we sure.
Well, I also think you value experiences, but you also, as you get older, when you're younger, I felt like there's so much time that I have to, there's so many branches to this tree. Is it going to go to chaos? Is it going to go to safety? Is it going to go to middle of the road? Like which branch of these is going to take off? And, that's part of external market forces. That's part of your individual choices. That's part of all this. You lose your job, you keep your job, there's a recession, there's not a recession. Like that's what I'm saying, external and internal. So I think at least for me, when I was younger, it's also the fear of the unknown. So much fear of the unknown. And then when you get older and you maybe could be closer to that Brady Bunch party, it's like that, thank God, right? Then you have a little bit of like, oh, hey, my house is going to be paid off in 2 years, or I'm deciding to pay off my house if that's your financial choice, right? In 2 years, and then this, then this, and that. You can start to feel like the dominoes lining up a little bit rather than just like, they're all going to start falling any minute. That's the experience I had as a younger person. And I would imagine that some younger people feel that way, especially if you're a young family or you recently got married, you maybe bought a house, and wherever you are in the life scheme, I've had friends who panic about their kids with the money thing too, right? Because it's like, how are they going to be able to afford this? How are they going to be able to do this? And it's like, well, shoot, is that a conversation for us too? Because we want them to have the information, but they're young adults. I mean, they need to be making their choices and coming to us with that too. So, I think the shame thing kind of comes up for me even in this money conversation. And I know when I've been in conversations about money before, if you didn't grow up with money, you grew up relatively somewhat poor, or, your family struggled, maybe you had an illness, or, there's all kinds of reasons why you're one step away from being homeless. I mean, a lot of us are like that. I mean, it's really difficult. You have the bread earner, has a serious illness or a disability or something, and then just like goes like that. But it comes with, if you've grown up in that climate, like you're saying, kids take on a lot, and then you yourself are in a financially, have more financial freedom, you almost feel bad, right? There's that struggle too, where it's like, oh, I almost feel like do I deserve this money? Like, are people with money are bad? Like, I grew up thinking people with money are like loser, like mean people and a-holes. Like,
Right.
people definitely have that alternate story. So I think it's like being able to blend in both of those lives, and to have peace with it and be content, and then understand what you want to do with money, and where does all that come from, and then what are you going to do with it, which is what we always talk about on this podcast. It's like, okay, here you are, here's the part that is reality, grateful, 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 not the
Right.
greed of, oh, should I have this much money? Should I have more money? Should I live in a house like this? Should I just, live in another neighborhood? All that is very much the greed conversation, which is
Yes.
very, very all over the money conversation, I feel like, for sure.
Well, and it comes to, I mean, this topic of all the topics, this one ties into the statement grateful, not greedy more than anything else, because money, because it like the consistent view
It just like,
is,
yeah, just basically,
yeah,
yeah.
we just like it's like, ever like most people want more. Like, do I need more? Do I not need more? Like, what is enough? And that's a question that I sit and think about, like,
That's a great
what is
question.
enough? Like,
Yeah,
yes,
because you
sure,
share
I
it,
always want.
they're like, you want all this money, it's like money
Sure.
comes with problems, new
So
money, new problems. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know, like, do squirrels, when they cut away nuts, do they ever get to the point where these are enough nuts? I mean, maybe they run out of space, but like, that's where I figure, like, how many nuts do I need? And like, I really, and then are more nuts really going to make a difference?
Oh my
I
God,
think
this
those
is
is
such a good analogy too. And am I a better squirrel because I have more nuts? Am I a better squirrel
totally.
because I've kept aside this many nuts and I only ate two of my nuts that I have, even though I have so many, right? Or
Exactly.
am I a better squirrel because I saved all my nuts and I gave away two because this other squirrel didn't save anything and I felt bad? Like, right? Like, it's a really good
Yeah.
analogy because it forces you to really kind of get clear on, yeah,
What
and all that
what
conversation.
is
What
right?
is it?
Like, what is it for you? And like, what is your comfort? Like, what is my comfort here? What do I need? And then when I list it, I'm like thinking, I think about it and I think, okay, why do I need that? Like, where is that from? Is that like an inherited thing that I brought over from my parents? Is that who I am now? Does that apply to me in this lifetime, in this environment? And yes or no or maybe, but then I filter it out and try and figure out, like, okay, these pieces do apply. These don't. This is not my story. I want to get rid of that part. And then, like, okay, then I look at it and map it out and I was like, all right, so this is enough. Like, more is not better here. More is just more. And that's where and I think, because we say in this society, in this culture, money is power. You hear that?
Yeah.
Money is power. And you're like, so we know power is the most corrupting force in the world.
Yeah.
And now we just assigned money to it. And so now we're like, okay, so money is the most corrupting, which, a lot of people say. So then it's like, how do we take some of that power away from it? How do we manage it with um, um, less power, less emotion, just clear?
Emotional. Yeah,
Yeah,
like yeah, like investment really, like
totally.
in it.
Because
Well, and I'm reflecting even on what you just said because Denzel Washington has a really good quote that I think that's helpful to kind of think about this. And he's like, yeah, money can't buy happiness, but it makes a heck of a down payment. So I think that's true, right? That's
it's,
true because what you're talking about is power, but it's also individual power. It's also personal
yeah,
power. It's also
yes.
I'm going to use my, I don't want to cuss. So what would I say? It's I don't have to take this money. There's another
Yeah.
word that people use that starts with an F. But it's the something you money. And it's basically designed to say, like, when your back's against a wall and you have to either get rid of a problem or, make a different decision or whatever, like that's your
Mhm.
little pot. Say that's that
Yeah.
money. And I think that's kind of the point he's making is, it just gives you options, then you're
It does.
not constantly making those smaller choices.
Exactly. So then the thing is that this is really grateful, not greedy. Don't get greedy on that, right? It
Mhm.
it doesn't make you happy, but it does, create a good down payment. You just need a down payment. You don't need all the money to buy
Yeah,
a
yeah, that's
house,
good.
right?
You don't need
So
30%.
that's yeah, you only need 20%. You don't need the 100%. And are we
Mhm.
always trying to get the 100%.
Yeah.
And like, and that doesn't, we just need the down payment. We just need like the down payment. And that's it. That's all we need. And so, you know, for me, that's an important piece to remember, because I'm someone who looks at that and is just like, I want it, like, I want it everything locked and loaded. I want to understand where everything's going to be. And that's not how money works. Like, it's volatile, right?
Yep.
Someone gets sick, something happens, you have a massive thing happen to your house with your plumbing, you know, you're like, it's just, you have to be okay with the ebb and flow with it, which is one part of it. And then the other piece is like, and like, things will shift. They will shift. That we know. Like, everything's just a phase. They're going to go different things. So you can plan, and then things are going to shift, and you can put safety nets in place, but you're not going to have every safety net in place, or maybe you will, and that's going to be exhausting. But that's the balance of like, how much energy does this take from me, and is that appropriate? And I've been trying to really uncouple for me, it's the power it has, like, because how I grew up. For you talk about shame and like that piece of making mistakes and all that type of thing. And I totally identify with that when I make like a decision on my money, invest or whatever, and it wasn't the smart thing to do. I'm like, ooh. And how long do I hold on to that? Or do I take it as a lesson that I now apply into the future, instead of kind of reviewing and going, why did I do that? That was not, you know. So there's like the shame piece, the power piece, like, you know, how much is enough, and how do we get to a place where we can feel the grateful of what we have, and the enough, the down payment, and then let go of the more nuts. I think I need more nuts.
More nuts. Yeah. So, okay, yeah. This is hard.
It is.
Just like maybe people are kind of following along this conversation. They're like, oh, they're just talking about money and they're talking about their little stories, and isn't that cute? Yeah, I'm like, it's pretty emotional, I have to say. Just like I'm really feeling this. Like, it's a lot in here, and I even am reflecting even on the way I live my life, the choices that I've made, the career options that I've made and that I've given up. And then how do you want to spend your time? The fact that, you know, often I can just speak for myself as a woman, our work is not financially paid for. You know, I don't get a paycheck for the 24/7 that I, you know, do around all my management. I mean, basically, if I went and got the job as a house manager and a nanny and a dog sitter somewhere else, I'd probably be making, you know, six figures. Definitely, I'd be making six figures in the area where I live. Well, I don't see that. So that's part of the emotion of this also. And then, you know, even reflecting on a couple things too is the utility of money, right? So we talked about our happiness schedule last week, and just figuring out what happiness is. But then it's also like, well, what does money do for you that contributes to your happiness? And one of the things that money can do for you that contributes to your happiness, is your point, is it doesn't have to become the thing that you are chasing. It can be an like an incidental or a bystanding thing, you know, a next thing that comes from the other things that you are chasing. And this isn't a big passion conversation. This isn't a big chase your passion. I'm actually not super aligned with that conversation. I'm more aligned with get a job as something that you can do when you're young, put away as much money as you can, and then figure it out over the next 5 to 10 years, right? Like, then you can change careers or do something else, because you're sitting there with your 100 grand in the bank, and you can be like, oh, then let me figure something else out. Let me do something else, you know, live lean, always live lean. And yeah, and then my husband has this, I think it's a really good discussion along that, just to saying like, everyone has to do their residency at some point. Like, if you're going to be successful in whatever you're going to do, successful, however you define that, you have to do your version of a residency. So whether that's law school, whether that's getting your PhD, whether that's getting your plumbing license, whether that's, you know, getting your engineering degree, you know, whatever technical degree you want or whatever, there's times that you spend not only getting that degree, but then investing the time that it takes to get to the point where people are confident that they could go to you for the skill that you say that you have, right? So that's all part of the money conversation, because those things take time. So while we're in that conversation, that's your point about letting it flow and putting in little, little milestones that you want to make. And I follow, for years and years, I've had this budgeting app called You Need a Budget. It's YNAB, YNAB. You Need a Budget. And I was very aligned with that guy and Jesse, it's his name. I forget his last name. Mika, maybe? I want to be wrong about that. But YNAB, and it's this very successful app, so people can find it. But what I love about that app, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's an accounting app essentially. So I understood it. I get that it's a ledger effectively, and his whole concept is money comes in, you give it a job so that you don't wake up at 3 a.m. and wonder how you're going to pay this or, how do you do that or how do you do that? It's like it's like we've talked about in another podcast before that you're even in that situation, the decision is already made. Right. I've already said that money that's coming in from this job, $1,000 of it is going to pay my rent. Here you go, electric bill. Here's your, for $50. Here you go, cable. Here you go. And here's my fund money and all that so that you can start to define it. Because one of the things that I think is really important, gosh, this is a lot, Rach, like the timing up in this is, and then please talk because I'm like processing as we're in this conversation is, what have you been responsible for about delineating what's your point about money? What's your point? What's your point? Like, is it so you can have a really nice house? Is it so that you can keep it out? Is it so that you can have a lifestyle that allows you to be with your children the most often? Is it about being able to have a situation that allows you that your parents can be proud of you? Like, I don't know. Like everyone's got stories, right? And and I think for that point, the story is fine. You get to choose whatever story you want. If your story is achievement so that my parents are proud of me, even though they're 80, great. Yeah, that's fine. Right. And they're achievement, so I can spend more time with my kids. Totally fine. No one's judging either way. It's just I think that's where this conversation can go is how do we get into that grateful space, grateful that we can make choices that are our own and own them, and then be responsible for whatever the money is that needs to come from those choices. And then not blaming everyone else that we made those choices and that now require us to do X with money. And there's more layers there, but I need you to fill in because I have to take a emotional break.
It is. It's like it's something
I really thought this is a lot.
It is a lot. And here's the beauty of it. When you are able to talk to someone about this, someone you're close with, like you and I, or your partner or your kid, like it forces you to like unpack it more and to process it more and to understand it. And it is a lot. There's a lot of pieces there. And, and the question is, it's like, everyone has a money story. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying, do you understand yours? Do you know where it's from? And does that apply to you? And then the same thing, like you said, like give each dollar a job. And how is that? Like, where are your values? What are your core values? And are you is your money aligning with those? Is your decision making aligning with your core values? And if it's not, how do you need to get there? And for me, I look at it as like, I make choices right now. My freedom, my ability to have flexibility outweighs earning more money. It does. Yes. And so like,
I've always had that thing.
And so, so I'm clearly, and I thought about that and I was like, and I'm making choices based on that, to preserve those things that are super valuable in my life. And then obviously like if that's because I'm in a place where I'm like, I've determined what is enough for me, not like I don't need more, like could add more things? Sure. Is it going to make a significant difference in my life? Probably not. So that's where I'm like, if it's not going to make a significant difference, if I'm happy where I am, like, then that's great. And my priority is, being present for my son, having the ability to like, if it's sunny, get out on a paddleboard, like, those types of things that allow me to have flexibility in my life. To be able to show up to wrestling and teach yoga for the wrestlers, like all of those things. If I had other commitments and other things that I was doing to generate more income, I would have to give those up. And that's where I look at like what is my cost benefit and how does that work for me? And I try to stick with that because before, I think when we're young, we're in the let's get as many nuts as we can, which is appropriate. And then there's a place like, or is it appropriate? Like, I think
It's harder to get the nuts because, you don't get paid as much. And, it's like,
true.
right.
And you don't have the skill yet. You don't have like there's a lot of pieces of that. But I think, the generations that are coming up now, they are starting to think about like, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Like, is that appropriate? Like, I don't want that, so I'm inspired by how watching different younger generations come up and look at those things differently. Cause we were raised as like, you do your job, you go to work, like, and that's how we entered. And then things have shifted a lot through our lifetime to be looking outside the box and not following the norm. But so that going back to this, like the question is what are your values? Like, what do you like, not money, just like what are your core values and how are you spending, like how are you managing your money to align with those? And then also like the other piece is like, what allows you to sleep at night? That's always like, if I wake up thinking about something like financially or like whatever, I'm like, clearly there's something there that's not settled. And I need to look at that and find a place that I could get settled. And a lot of the times it's things that are from the outside coming in, like things that aren't in my control. Family, my mom, like whatever, those things, like then I have to figure out like, if I can't control them, how do I frame them in a way or put something around them to make them more comfortable. But, to figure out where that comfort is for you and does that align with you, not with your parents, not with your past, not with like you as your 20-year-old self, but you as your current self.
Yeah, like right this very minute. And even when you're talking about values, it's like, whew, that's rough too, because you really have to, again, you can have anything but not everything.
True.
So, okay, so I can have anything but not everything. That means that I also have to prioritize. I can't say like a 6-year-old. I would like a peanut butter jelly sandwich and mac and cheese, and I'd like a popsicle, and can I also have a chocolate chip cookie, and I'd like a hot dog, and I'd like, some chocolate milk on the side. And I'd like all those all at once, and I would like to eat them right now, please. Like that's almost, I feel like what this money conversation can be, because I even think about, where you live and the choices we get into these bigger decisions, like you own a home or you have cars or you own a business. Like there's things that are bigger decisions that you can't just turn on a dime and say, oh, I don't value that anymore. Or I have to kind of, sometimes I feel like now that we're talking about this, I'm trying to fit my choices into the values in the way that I can justify them, right? So I value freedom, I value family, I value integrity, I value honesty, I value all these things, right? But like freedom and family, we can focus on those for the money conversation. So if I value those things, well, those are sometimes often antithetical, like the opposite bookends, of the 180 on the sphere, because freedom and family comes a lot of times with, especially if you have, children, it comes with stability and sameness and routine and predictability and all those things. Well, that's is it the opposite? Maybe it's not. I feel like to me, having flexibility and freedom can be the opposite of having a home that is built for your children, right? So it's like, even in that value conversation, you have to get very clear. I feel like I'm talking to myself again. I need to get clear. I need to have this conversation with Chris. We're going to have this conversation right now. So that you don't wake up, or that you're not constantly, I think those of us who are mullers, we're constantly like, oh, does that make sense? Is that the right thing? Should it be like that? Or could it be something else? I don't know. There's a million ways to think about this. And you get like in that whole conversation. So then it's like, well, how do we get clear on how have you been able to get clear on your values? And let's just go through it, do a little exercise here. How do you get clear on your values? And then how do you put the money conversation into those values, and then be good with it. Be grateful that that's the end of the conversation, not greedy that, well, one more shift, or, I just really want to go on this trip also. I want to do that thing, but I also want to go on this trip. And I know I really don't have enough money for it, but it'll all work out, whatever, life is short, etc. So how do we do that? Or how have we been able to do it? How can we talk about it that's productive for all of us?
Sure. I think when you were talking about this, I was like, it was a little bit of our conversation earlier this week that we were chatting, and you had the issue with your house, the plumbing issue, and you're like, this moment, why do I own a house? Like, why am I just not renting?
I was like, I'm selling this place. This is ridiculous. I'm here.
And that's a really interesting point. Like, and you made me think about it. I was like, why do I feel like I need to own a house? Where does that come from? And is it the financial decision that does that make financial sense, or is that emotional decision? And that's where like my values and the finances and the money have to they might play off of each other.
That's a great example, because even in the financial sense, even if you're going to have the conversation about, I'm throwing my money to rent. Actually, you're not. In the beginning of your mortgage, you're, the way it's amortized, just spending all that money on interest. And now they pay, never get that back. Not even like you get anything really to write off anymore. Okay. So now you've done that. But if you run the numbers, you can be net for 10, 20 years on a house.
Yeah.
And the stress.
Without the stress. And also we talked about freedom with more freedom.
Yeah, way more freedom and flexibility, because you can say like, hey, I want to get a bigger place. So, okay, I can spend an extra $1,000 a month for these next 2 years. And then I can backtrack, and then I can move to a different state, or I can, live next to my friend, because, right? Like, exactly. I mean, it gets loaded.
But the flip side of that is, if you value stability, you don't get that. You don't get that stability.
Your family, and with that, if you value family, and then you put that onto your kids, therefore you kids must, or don't you value stability and structure? Okay, you must, because your kids. So
right.
Yeah.
So that question, that's a good exercise. That was a good mental exercise for me to get through this week. Thank you, Chris. I was like,
I know, me too. I'm really in that conversation also. It's like, because that's to your point. It's, of course, when I was raised, that was like a holy grail.
Exactly. And that's what I think too. It is. And to have it and have it yours, and have the Brady Bunch of work.
Where if you keep that rented, you get your next one, maybe, you figure out what's that one, and you get your next one, and that's where you're going to live for 10 years, your 10-year house, all of this conversation. Yeah,
totally. And then have the Brady Bunch episode where you get to burn your mortgage statement, right?
Yeah.
That's that's how we were raised. It would be funny to know that there's not an episode like that exists.
I know, right? We gotta plug it in or something. I don't remember that.
I know. I have to find out now, but it's a clear memory. But now I realized, I was thinking about it when you posed that question. I was like, is that my parent stuff that I am living right now? Do I really need a home? What does that represent for me? And what is it? The stuff in it? Is it the place? Is it the place to call home? Is it, is it the stability? Is it the idea that no one can take this from me once I own it? What is behind that?
That's actually interesting too, because everyone who rents, by the way, I've been a renter before, and I loved my home when we lived in LA. I loved it, and that was very much my home. I made it a home. I did all my own decorating and everything, right? So it's like that was my home, and we leased it, Right. So that's a fabricated kind of conversation too, which again is the money thing, because if you're going, what is money doing for you? What is the point? And is it an albatross, or is it freedom? And I think people have more money, they say it kind of does buy you freedom, which is true, just tactically. It does buy you a little bit, okay, you have more flexibility. You can buy a different car. You could take a different trip. You can not work that day. You can, go to your son's baseball game. Yes, that's amazing. There's a lot of great stuff it can do for you. But also just being comfortable questioning all every financial decision that you have on the table right now.
Yeah.
Just get comfortable questioning that, okay, what is this about? Oh, because I value X, Y, and Z. And is that the only way I could value that? Or is that the best, there's the best way, and then the next best way, right? Your next best option, right? So it's okay, if I don't have a home, if I don't have this home, what's my next best option, And if you don't have a great next best option, then you're like, okay, well, then I keep this home. And then that's an ending of that conversation. But yeah, being able to, the other conversation that I think we can have as we're rolling through this is, some people are able to not to work their whole lives. I don't mean their whole lives, but throughout their whole life, they don't, and not all of it has to be working, right? They figured out ways to like retire early or have a business and sell it. And I think in certain cultures, like Silicon Valley culture and that, it's like, that's talk about shame and greed. Like that's a whole concept, right? Like if you're there, a lot of that is built on, having your company, having your exit strategy, getting out successfully, deciding if you want to roll another, if you've made your 30 million and you've put together the math and you think that's enough to take off your 4% on 30 and you can live on that. It's like that's a whole different level of conversation that they're having. But the concept being, if you can even look at your life and say, why do we say retire at 65? Like, what is that number?
Why and that was our parents' number.
Yeah, and then people, right? And then people are, or if you're in Spain, it's like what 50? It's like I'm not even gonna. I don't think I'm gonna work the rest of my life. But like if you're able, yeah, and then you end up working longer, and then you're shamed because oh my gosh, they had to work until they were 75. It's like, well, a lot of people they enjoy that aspect of their life a lot, and some people do have to keep working. But one of the things I came across recently that I thought was very interesting was this concept of retiring in your 50s, and that it's very likely that you could have a health event, whether that's, you have a high blood pressure, you get injured, or, you have a heart attack, who knows what, it's like something like that. That's very likely, or more likely, in your 50s to have like something that could impact your life negatively, especially as you go, the older you get, the greater the chances of having something like that, right? So you're thinking, well, I'm going to retire in 65. You're thinking about that as as all things being equal, as there's no change in this function. Well, no, because your health is a big risk in that function. Your health is a big risk, or your, just circumstances of your life, or, if you're, whatever you have going on. So it's important, I think, also to think about chunking your money life into phases of, to your point, I think we're just working because we think we need to work to make money to pay for all these bills that we have. Well, what if we didn't have so many bills? What if we didn't do it like this? But like we can really like backtrack, like reinvent the wheel a little bit and say like, all this piece that we put together that we said this is what we want. And congratulations to the grateful people who have it the way they want. They are dialed in. I have a couple friends like this that I'm like, they are dialed in. They have the house that they want, the way that they want it. They have it paid off or not paid off because of this, and they have their business running this way, and then they have their exit strategy this way. Grateful, grateful, grateful. Fantastic. And even them, though, I will say, struggle with spending. Because it's like, well, I work so hard. I have this all set up. I've got all my nuts right here. I don't want to change. I don't want to move those nuts around. I don't want to risk losing a nut down the hill. Like I don't want any of that stuff. Right. So even in talking about, I think our habit of working for money and our habit of squirreling away more nuts keeps us from making the hard choices and doing the assessment on our lives of what money is doing for us and what responsibility we have in that conversation to, like he says in YNAB, like give money a job. Money does not own us. We have the power to give money the job. We should be in charge of money. It shouldn't be in charge of us. And I feel in this conversation so much and I think that's why I was even just having a difficult time, 15 minutes ago, just pushing through this, because you feel like money's coming after you. It's almost like money's attacking you, or the conversation about money is attacking you. Not a lot of freedom in that. And I'm not in charge, because that's a classic, right? Like, oh, well, if I just had endless money, XYZ. Oh, if I didn't have to work, XYZ. Oftentimes the breadwinner. Well, someone in this family has to make the money. Someone in this family has to, go and do XYZ. Well, there you go. Do you? Is that true? Is that true? I don't know if that's true. Or maybe it's true. Maybe it's a resource management issue that everyone has decided, but someone in this family also has to take care of all the albatross that's around money that's being made, because that money has to be put into accounts. Those accounts have to pay for stuff. Then, the investments have to be made, and then these has to be made, right? Because again, more money, more problems. So yeah, I mean, you can reflect on that a little bit too, because I know I'm sure you have friends who retired early or retired late. And, my father-in-law retired very early, very young. And, we've kind of watched that. And then my mother-in-law worked until she was, until the day she died, basically. She worked right up until the end. So, and I think that's often out of necessity. So even that, like, I think making hard choices is really what's coming up for me in this, and being responsible for the gratefulness that you can have internally. You can create the gratefulness.
Yes. And lean into that for sure. And I think, I have a very different view of those things now as I did in my, 20s, 30s, 40s, right? And now stepping into the 50s, it's just it has a different flavor. And I am starting to brush up again, like see the people in my age group that are choosing to retire, or choosing to at least semi-retire or retire. And their philosophy is like, I have enough. I have enough. Like, I don't need more. Like, yes, I could earn more, but I have enough. And the other piece of it is I value my health and wellness right now. I want to take advantage of the fact that I could do anything I want. I have the body that I want. I have the fitness that I want. I have the strength that I want to go do the things, whether it's getting on the water every day, or, doing a race, or just spending time with friends and living your best life. And what is that? Like, why, that would be, I didn't appreciate that as much as I do now in this phase of life. And so for me, it means like you have to evaluate it constantly, because it shifts as we get wiser, as we get older, as we have life experiences, as we see our kids grow, as we see, all of these things, as we see life move faster and faster every year. Yeah. That is like a piece of it where you're like, okay, I'm in my 20s. I was so driven by my career into my 30s. Like, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get to this point. I'm going to be at this level. I'm going to earn this much. And I would set a goal every year. And I was like super determined, and I loved my career. And that is not who I am now. What I was then, like perfect. And it started my foundation, and it built me to get to here. But I make very different decisions now. So the question is are you making choices based on your old self, or are you just making choices on your current and future? Like where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow. And that's what I am constantly inspired. And this is like a beautiful thing, is when, I get the opportunity to meet lots of people in class and in these other various things. And as I ask them, like, how did you know? Like, what did you decide? Like, oh, you're choosing, you're starting a business right now. That's amazing. Like, who wants to start a business at this point in their lives? But it's like, it's been their dream, or that's what they want to do. And it gives them like joy. And then there's some people that love their work that will do it till the day they die, and that will fulfill them. And I kind of feel that way about teaching yoga. Like, it brings me so much joy, and it brings me so much in return. But then there's that question of, is that true once Dax, my son goes off to school? Will I want that anchor of teaching or not? And that's where I have to evaluate that. When I can kind of look at it right now, I don't know how I'm going to feel once I get there. And so I can kind of project to that, but I don't know it. I know at that point, I'm going to reevaluate. So come back in a year and a half, and I'll be like,
yeah, you get, and that's like probably a good place for us to kind of even wrap all this up in a bow, because it's the tactical piece of it. Do I have enough? And even if you want to decide on, you keep working, like you're saying, something that you have. I mean, I'm sure I'm still going to do some type of nursing until I'm dead, like it's, especially coming into it later in life, I'll keep doing that, but it's not necessarily money driven. It's not necessarily like I'm doing that because I need to keep working, or, it's more a choice. I want to keep doing this, and I happen to get paid for it. That's bonus, but I want to keep doing this. Right. So being able to have that. And then I definitely would tell people to use a budgeting app, or get clear on how much money you spend, because this is part of the anxiety comes from not knowing what's happening to all your money. That is a slippery slope, right? It's like the money comes in and it's just gone, and you don't realize and it's not about the latte you're having it's more the big decisions. I'm not a big proponent of the like skip your Starbucks, like, oh, every day it adds up to, yes, that's true. That's what you want to skip. But I'd be more concerned about the $400 or $500 car payment, or the extra 4 gym memberships that you have, or the, whatever commuting that you do in a way that, costs you big chunks of money every month. So having that budgeting app for me is very helpful, just to kind of give me clarity. First of all, where's the money going? How much do I spend? Where is it going? What's happening? Second of all, then once I know all that, is that, to your point, is that aligning with my values? Is the money going proportionally to the way I value my life? And if not, where can I make those adjustments, and where can I make those modifications? And then thirdly, even beyond today, I'm grateful that grateful that I know where my money's going, grateful that it's aligning with my values. And I'm grateful that I'm setting up for a future that I can create at any point in my life. So if that future is going to be in 5 minutes, if that future is going to be in 5 months, if that future is going to be in 50 years, whatever, but I am so it's kind of like taking that really big assessment, definitely need to know where your money's going. There's no question that is a big anxiety piece for people. And I have a friend who uses Rocket Money. She said it was like life-changing, because all of a sudden she's like, I never knew how much I spent really, and like where the money was going. And, she's like, that's great. It's just like, just tells me where it's going. Granted, it costs, I don't know, $10 a month or something like that. So you have that. I don't know how much YNAB is. It's a lot too, but it's worth it, because that's part of the responsibility of money. And then all that, I think, elicits, like, brings out your money story. Because then you can see, this is where my money's going. These are what my values are. This is the disconnect. Oh, shoot, that's from an old story. X that out. Don't need that. This is my new story. This is what I'm going to create. Here's the future. And this is how I want to do that. And you can definitely do that with a fiduciary, a financial advisor, a good one, a fee-based financial advisor. It's not a financial podcast, but, might as well throw some skills in there that I have. But a fee-based, fiduciary or financial advisor who could really just help you kind of put the plan together and ask you these hard questions. And then I would say, as a takeaway, Rach, you can give me your insights, but I think having this conversation with someone, again, that you trust, who knows you, who knows your idiosyncrasies, who knows your difficulty spending money, or the panic that you might have on. It's so crazy, because I always say, I'm like, I can so much easier spend a massive chunk of money on my house emergency or whatever, then I can spending $200 on that shirt that I kind of actually need.
Yeah.
But it's $200. Why is that shirt $200? Like, okay, fine. But like you get caught in that, or I can spend it on like leopard coat that I'm probably never going to wear, but it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Oh my God. I have to have it, right? $500. Ching. Okay. But now, like, I need this t-shirt. It's $50. And I'm like, why is that t-shirt $50? I'm going to wear that t-shirt every third day for the rest of my life. But like, right? Like, that is ridiculous. Yeah. So getting in touch with kind of those idiosyncrasies that maybe I'm the only one, but that you might have, that are kind of like disconnects, and just letting that be more of a fluid line. So those are for sure.
Yeah. And I would say, the other thing we hit on is like, where is shame sitting in here? Right? Like,
yes.
Take like a little magnifying glass called shame and put it over and see where is this, like, where am I making choice based on shame? Like, or it's changing my choices or my decisions based on shame, because that is a big thing. And, those idiosyncrasies, they're there, and I try to identify them. And then I go through and say, like, is that needed? What do I need to do to change that? It doesn't make sense for me anymore. It doesn't match with who I am now. That's the old stuff.
Right.
And the conversation that you said, have it with someone you trust. I would say have it with someone who you trust and you admire how they manage money. You admire how they make choice. You admire those things. Don't just have it with someone that you're like, oh, I want to have it with someone who I'm like, I admire them. Like, I think they've done a great choice. And like these conversations with you and I'm like, I know we are aligned in so many ways. That's why these conversations work really well. Not because we're the same, but because we respect one another's choices and we understand them. They make sense in our heads. Like, totally makes sense. Like when you share something, I'm like, I understand where. Yeah, yeah. And like we communicate, we speak the same language. We speak a very similar language around finances. And that's what I would say when you find someone to talk to about this, and you could do it with more than one person, I would say that use that as a filter to select the right person to have that conversation and to continue to have that conversation. And if it doesn't give you what you need, go and find someone else and see if that will do it. Because I find that having, we know two brains are better than one. And yes, sometimes definitely. I cannot see my stuff until you hold up the mirror for me, and then I get to see it. And I'm didn't notice that like there. Thanks for showing me that I have spinach in my teeth with that mirror. And so that's where that person that can reflect for you is so helpful and can help you move down this path of being able to get to a place financially, and have money work for you and not have power over you. And I think that's where I continue to work really hard to get to, is I have it work for me, like assigning its job. I love that idea. And then, and not have power over me, because it used to feel like it was controlling me. And that's not how it is. I have the money's mine. I should be controlling it.
Yeah, exactly. I should be telling it, this is what you're going to do, money. And instead I'm like, oh, I don't know, money. What do I do?
Exactly.
Y'all just go sit over here in the corner, wait for you to tell me what's wrong with my life. Yeah, no.
Yeah. So that was a really good summary, Chris. So thank you. Yeah.
I love just to finalize as one point that you made in talking to multiple people, because the other key thing here is things aren't always what they seem. So I speak for myself. You might have all these made up ideas in your head about someone who's really, they're doing so well, or they're really successful, or they manage their money really well. And then you start talking to them, and then they give out their vulnerabilities, or they say what they stress about, or they're like, hey, no, I really struggled to get to this point. I don't know if I would make that same investment of time of, 12 years to go to medical school again, or I don't know if I would do that. And you're like, oh, geez, I thought you had it. Like that was the lifeline that was happening. And I think that's important too. And that feeds into your conversation of shame, that everyone's going through something. Everyone has a different way. I understand that we have more billionaires now on the planet than we will ever need in the history of time. And that is not necessarily a metric to look at to say what money is or can do for you, because, it's a very powerful force. But it's to be used by you. You are in control of the money that comes in or that you don't want to come in, and how you use it and where you put it. So I think that's the grateful part. The grateful part is you can tell your money what it's good. This is your job. It's your job money. That's what you're going to do. And not be greedy for having the hot dog, the chocolate milk, the popsicle, the popcorn, and all the extra things, everything all at once. And just being responsible for like how it comes and living into your values, which I love. I love that. And I'm sure I'm making choices even this afternoon that are not aligned. That, so I'm going to be like reflecting on this in the next 20 minutes as I go to wherever and make choices and think, is this consistent with what I want to be doing? Yeah. And still enjoying my life along the way, which is
of course. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, that's the key, but that's not easy. That's not easy either, because you can get all heady about that too, right? So it's like, yeah, it's a loaded conversation. So I appreciate everyone being in there and hanging there with us today, all about money. So this has been, is, and forever will be the Grateful Not Greedy podcast. And Rach, I think you are living a very rich and full life. So
I think you are too.
Aloha, Chris.